All right, continuing here. I'm customizing my assets. I'm making my Zeus face. So I'm going to, let's see, duplicate that eye. There we go. And I want to play with the color of the eye. And there's all kinds of ways you can do this. I'm just using layer styles, very similar to the way we built with vector shapes. I'm going to give good old Zeus nice, well, let me give him greenish eyes. Olive eyes. And then I want to give him a little highlight. So what can I do? I'm going to use my little vector shapes and change that color to white, but I'm not going to leave it as a vector shape. So if you're using your vectors, this is an opportunity for you to merge things together and kind of clean it up. And I might do something like this. So now that eye is made of all those different layers, but I might use my magic wand and just grab, with contiguous turned on, the eyebrow, duplicate that, Command J, Command T, grow it bigger, and move it up above. So now my eye is underneath that eyebrow, which I kind of like. And that gives me a few things to animate with. So I'm going to make that eyebrow even bigger. So it's not like a black eyelid. Instead, it's like an eyelid and an eyebrow at the same time. And I can tilt it, and I can warp it. And this will help me play with his expression. And if I want, I can even change its color, just like if it were a vector shape. So you get to these layer styles. This is what we did when we did exercise 2 bonuses. And you double click on the gray of the layer and you'll get to all of these options, like stroke, like fill, and you can adjust all of them. And don't worry that they look pixelated. GIFs are going to look pixelated. They're only made for screen resolution. Okay, so I built all of that. Now I have to decide what components do I want to keep separate and what components do I want together. Well, it might be fun if the eye changes from green to red, so I might keep those components. The highlight, I could probably leave. The white of the eye, I think I like it there. So really, there's really no problem in me keeping these all separate so I can play with them all later. But to organize them, I can select them all, put them into a group, and call that the left eye. And then I can duplicate the whole group, and I can rename it the right eye, or at least the eye on my right. So I guess I'll use the cardinal directions of the character here. And so I'm then going to take the left eye and move it to Zeus's left. So I'm going to do Command T, right click inside, flip it horizontally, and then move it over. And now with this eye, maybe I don't want them to be exactly the same, so I can rotate it a little bit. And that looks kind of nice. Maybe I'll rotate the other one too, as a group. So now it strikes me that it's a little weird that he has 2 sets of eyebrows. So these are going to be more like wrinkles in his expressions. So maybe I want to thin those out and use those as assets too. So what can I do? I use my magic wand, I select them. This one's easiest because it's floating on its own. I duplicate it, and now I'm going to fill it with the same color overlay of the background. So find color overlay, pick the color, pick it here. Now I'm going to give it a stroke that also matches the background. And that will mask it for me. Like so. And then let's grow it a little bit more in size. There we go. So now I've masked that eyebrow. Then I'm going to duplicate that mask, flip it. This won't work exactly because they're not the same shape, but that helps me to mask this other eyebrow. What's another way I could do that? I could simply use my lasso, draw the shape I want to mask, and then fill that with my paint bucket and hold down Option to steal this color, and then fill that shape with that paint bucket, and then just turn off the stroke, right? So there's lots of ways you can edit. I can also just use my paintbrush and paint right on top at full opacity. Okay, so as I'm building my Zeus, now what do I want from these? Let's see, maybe I just draw my own kind of wrinkles on Zeus's forehead. I'll use my tablet here so I have pressure sensitivity. I'll make it black, and on a new layer, I'm just going to draw little wrinkles. Maybe little skinny ones right here and here. Right, and I might label those wrinkles on the forehead. Now, I ask myself, do I ever need these big black eyebrows? Or can I just merge all of those in to my base layer? And I'm going to merge them in by selecting them and then hitting Layer Merge Layers or Command E. So now I have this as an asset. I have wrinkles that I can play with as a separate asset for when he changes expressions. And I have his left eye and I have his right eye. What else might I want on Zeus? Maybe I want some highlights. So for this, I'm simply going to click on all the gray on the outside. And I'm going to duplicate it and then play with layer styles. And I'm going to do something like, let's see, I can do a satin. And that will give me a certain amount of highlights, and I can play with the opacity of that and the size of it. That's kind of nice. Maybe I play with a gradient overlay. And I have a gradient here. I could change it, but it just goes from gray to white. So it's lighter at the top, darker on the bottom. That works pretty well. Now he's starting to kind of look like a Zeus I can work with. And because he is the king, I feel like I need a crown, right? So I'm going to go to Pixabay, and I'm just going to look for a crown, but not a photograph of a crown. I want a vector of a crown, just because those will be the simplest. And I want it to be authentic only. I don't want AI crowns. And this one's pretty nice. It's not Christian, because Zeus is not Christian, so there's no like crucifix on it. So then I download it. And because it's a vector, I don't need to download it as a vector, but that means I know it's empty. It doesn't have a background. So I'm going to take the second to the largest. I don't even need to sign in to get that. And I'm going to drag it into my project, but I'm also going to drag it into my assignment folder, right? As an asset. So at this point, when I get something new from online, I'm going to make this folder called Other Assets. And so I just capture them there in case I accidentally damage them. And the only asset I have up here is the one I created already. Okay, now with this crown, what can I do? It's another asset. Well, this crown is probably going to get affected by the lightning strike of my story. So I don't want to merge it into the head, because maybe it will fall off of his head. And so I'm just going to put it slightly askew like that, nest it on his head, and then I realize, whoops, that was weird. Oh, I had to hit return first. I did hit return. Strange. That's why I keep the asset, so I can drag it in. All right, let me place it quickly. Now Command T, rotate it, flip it up. And what's kind of funny is even though there's not Christian symbols on this crown, it starts to remind me how close the Christian God image, like in the Sistine Chapel ceiling, is very much like Zeus, right? White guy, beard. So this might read as a few different things. So then the payoff is going to be showing the skull with the coin at the end. But what's my uh-oh? Well, uh-oh is that this doesn't fit within my 8x8, right? But that's not a problem. What I do is I select every layer so far. And I do Command T, and I'm just going to shrink it down to fit within my frame. Maybe position it a little bit lower. And now, even the layers that were turned off now fit, right? So these are all my different assets that I'm building. Okay, now let's fix that crown. In order to fix it, I need to rasterize it. Otherwise, I can't erase from it. And I can play with direct adjustments. All of these skills that we have been learning for compositing all come to play here. And it's the last thing I'll do today, just kind of working on these assets. Maybe find a lightning bolt next. And each asset you build will help you decide on the next asset. Now I need to clean it up. How can I clean it up? I need to delete out the bottom here of the crown so that it feels like it's sitting on his head. And then I'm going to double click and I'm going to set a stroke around the crown that is black and thin so it kind of matches with the rest of the illustration. And if I want to be extra fancy, I can add a gradation to the crown, but this time I'm going to use a gradation that is, let's see, iridescent. I'm going to make it look shiny. So I'm going to use this, but I'm going to use it at a lower opacity. And I'm going to change it so that the highlight is also right in the middle. So this just takes playing and create another one around that highlight that is darker. All right, and now I can play with that at a higher opacity, and I can change its angle. That looks pretty good. I can change its scale. I think that looks pretty good. And I can change its blending mode, like multiply or overlay or pin light. And I think pin light looks best. So we have so much control with these assets as long as we keep them separate. I can also put a drop shadow under it. So all those things we learned in compositing and all the different projects so far can be helpful to us in this project. There we go. Now, a background. I can't just have empty pixels. I need some sort of background. Even if it's just a white, white pixels filling the square. Or I can do like a Pixabay cloudy sky. And maybe I mix the cartoony imagery with big puffy clouds. In fact, I can just take this. I don't even need to open it in Pixabay. I don't need it at high resolution. I can just paste it in.